The 31st of May, 1899, Volume 2. Opposition serve so that the truth may shine more in its time. This morning, as I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus came, and at that very moment I saw the confessor. Jesus appeared a little disappointed with him, because it seemed that the confessor wanted everyone to approve that my situation was a work from God, and almost wanted to convince other priests by showing them something of my interior. Jesus turned to the confessor and said to him, "This is impossible. Even I received oppositions, and from people among the most distinguished, and also from priests and other authorities. They found fault with my holy works, to the point of saying that I was possessed by the devil. But I allow these oppositions, even from religious people, so that the truth may shine more in its own time. If you want to consult with 2 or 3 priests, among the most good and holy, and also learned, in order to receive enlightenment, and also to do what I want in the things to be done, which is advice from the good and prayer, this I allow, but the rest, no. It would be as though wanting to waste my works, making fun of them, which displeases me very much." Then he said to me, "All I want from you is an upright and simple operating. Do not bother about the pros and cons of creatures. Let them think what they want, without being the least troubled, since wanting that all be favourable is wanting to deviate from the imitation of my own life." End of the reading. The 31st of May, 1926, Volume 19. Difference between one who lives in the divine will and one who is resigned and submitted to it. The first one is sun, the second is earth, which lives of the effects of the light. The light of the divine will continues to envelop me, and my little intelligence, while swimming in the immense sea of this light, can just barely take a few drops of light and a few little flames of the so many truths, knowledges, and happinesses that this endless sea of the eternal will contains. And many times I cannot find the right words in order to put on paper that little bit of light. I say little compared to the much I leave out, because my little and poor intelligence takes as much as is enough to fill me. The rest I have to leave out. Who dives into the sea, he becomes all wet. Water flows everywhere on him, maybe even in his bowels. But as he goes out of the sea, how much of all the water of the sea does he carry with himself? Very little, indeed almost nothing, compared to the water that remains in the sea. And by having been in the sea, can he perhaps say how much water, how many species of fish and quantities of them there are in the sea? Certainly not. But he will be able to speak of the little he has seen of the sea. Such is my poor soul. While I was in this light, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, this is the unity of the light of my will, and so that you may love it more and more and be confirmed more in it, I want to make known to you the great difference which exists between one who lives in my will, in the unity of this light, and one who resigns and submits himself to my will. In order to make you comprehend this well, I will give you a simile from the sun, which is there on the horizon. The sun, being in the vault of the heavens, spreads its rays over the surface of the earth. Look, between the earth and the sun there is a sort of agreement. The sun touches the earth, and the earth receives the light and the touch of the sun. Now, by receiving the touch of the light, submitting to the sun, the earth receives the effects which the light contains, and these effects transmute the face of the earth. They make it turn green again. They make it flower. Plants develop, fruits mature, and many other wonders which can be seen on the face of the earth, always produced by the effects contained in the solar light. But by giving its effects, the sun does not give its light. On the contrary, it jealously preserves its unity, and its effects are not lasting, and therefore one sees the poor earth, now all flowery, now all stripped. It changes almost at each season, and undergoes continuous mutations. If the sun gave to the earth effects and light, the earth would change into sun, and would have no more need to beg for the effects, because containing the light within itself, it would become the owner of the source of the effects which the sun contains. Now, such is the soul who resigns and submits to my will. She lives of the effects contained in it. Not possessing the light, she does not possess the source of the effects contained in the Sun of the eternal volition, and therefore she looks almost like the earth, now rich in virtues, now poor. She changes at every circumstance. Even more, if she is not always resigned and submitted to my will, she would be like an earth that does not want to let itself be touched by the light of the sun. In fact, if the earth receives its effects, it is because it lets itself be touched by its light. Otherwise, it would remain squalid, unable to produce a single blade of grass. So remained Adam after sin. He lost the unity of the light, and therefore the source of the goods and the effects which the Son of my will contains. He could no longer feel the fullness of the divine Son within himself. He could no longer see within himself that unity of light, which his Creator had fixed in the depth of his soul, and which, communicating his likeness to him, made of him his faithful copy. Before sinning, since he possessed the source of the unity of light with his Creator, each little act of his was a ray of light, which, invading the whole creation, went to fix itself in the centre of his Creator, bringing him the love and the return for all that had been made for him in the whole creation. He was the one who harmonized everything and formed the note of accord between heaven and earth. But as soon as he withdrew from my will, his acts no longer invaded heaven and earth like rays, but they shrank, almost like plants and flowers, within the little circle of his field. So, losing the harmony with all creation, he became the clashing note of all creation. Oh, how low he descended, and cried bitterly over the lost unity of light, which, raising him above all created things, made of Adam the little god of the earth. Now, my daughter, from what I have told you, you can comprehend that the living in my will is to possess the source of the unity of the light of my will, with all the fullness of the effects contained in it. So light, love, adoration arise in each act of the creature, which, constituting itself act for each act, love for each love, like solar light invades everything, harmonizes everything, centralizes everything within itself, and like a shining ray, it brings to her Creator the return for that he has made for all creatures, and the true note of accord between heaven and earth. What a difference between one who possesses the source of the goods which the Son of my will contains, and one who lives of the effects of it. It is the difference that exists between the sun and the earth. The sun always possesses the fullness of its light and effects. It is always blazing and majestic in the vault of the heavens, nor does it need the earth. While it touches everything, it is untouchable. It does not let itself be touched by anyone. And if anyone dared even to fix on it, it would eclipse him, blind him, and knock him down with its light. On the other hand, the earth is in need of everything. It lets itself be touched and stripped, and if it wasn't for the light of the sun and its effects, it would be a gloomy prison, full of squalid misery. Therefore, there is no comparison that holds between one who lives in my will and one who submits to it. So before sinning, Adam did possess the unity of light, but he could no longer recover it during his life. It happened to him as to the earth that turns around the sun. Not being fixed in turning around, it opposes the sun and forms the night. Now, in order to render him firm again So that he might sustain the unity of this light, a repairer was needed, and this repairer was supposed to be superior to him. A divine strength was needed in order to straighten him up. Here is the necessity of redemption. My celestial Mama also possessed the unity of this light, and this is why, more than sun, she can give light to all. It was never night time, nor was there ever a shadow between her and the Supreme Majesty, but always full daylight. Therefore, in each instant, this unity of the light of my will made the whole of the divine life flow within her, which brought her seas of light, of joys, of happinesses, of divine knowledges, seas of beauty, of glory, of love. And she, as though in triumph, brought all these seas to her Creator as her own, to attest to him her love, her adoration, and to charm him with her beauty. And the divinity made flow yet more and new, beautiful seas. She possessed so much love that as though naturally she could love all, adore and make up for all. Her littlest acts done in the unity of this light were superior to the greatest acts and to all the acts of all creatures together. Therefore the sacrifices, the works, the love of all other creatures can be called little flames before the sun, little drops of water before the sea, compared to the acts of the Sovereign Queen. And this is why, by virtue of the unity of this light of the Supreme Volition, she triumphed over everything and conquered her very Creator, making him a prisoner in her maternal womb. Ah, only the unity of this light of my will, which she who ruled over everything possessed, was able to form this prodigy which had never before occurred, administering to her acts worthy of this divine prisoner. By losing this unity of light, Adam turned himself upside down and formed night, weaknesses, passions for himself and for the generations. By never doing her own will, this excelling virgin remained always straight and facing the eternal sun. Therefore it was always daylight for her, and she made the day of the Sun of Justice arise for all generations. If this Virgin Queen had done nothing else but preserve the unity of the light of the eternal volition in the depth of her immaculate soul, this would have been enough to give us back the glory of all, the acts of all, and the requital of love of all creation. Through her, by virtue of my will, the divinity felt come back to itself the joys and the happiness which it had established to receive through creation. Therefore she can be called the Queen, the Mother, the Foundress, the base and the mirror of my will, in which all can reflect themselves to receive its life from her. After this, I felt as though soaked with this light, and I comprehended the great prodigy of living in the unity of this light of the Supreme Volition. And my sweet Jesus coming back added, my daughter, Adam, in the state of innocence, and my celestial Mama possess the unity of light of my will, not by their own virtue, but by virtue communicated by God. On the other hand, my humanity possessed it by its own virtue, because in it there was not only the unity of the light of the Supreme Volition, but there was the eternal Word. And since I am inseparable from the Father and the Holy Spirit, the true and perfect bilocation occurred, that while I remained in heaven, I descended into the womb of my Mama. And since the Father and the Son are inseparable from me, they too descended into it, and at the same time they remained in the heights of the heavens. Now, while Jesus was saying this, the doubt came to me about whether the three divine persons had suffered, all three of them, or the Word alone. And Jesus resumed his speaking, saying, my daughter, because they are inseparable from me, the Father and the Holy Spirit descended with me, and I remained with them in the heavens. But the task of satisfying, of suffering, and of redeeming man was taken by me. I, Son of the Father, took on the role of reconciling God with man. Our divinity was untouched by the suffering of the slightest pain. It was my humanity that, united with the three divine persons in an inseparable way, placing itself at the mercy of the divinity, suffered unheard of pains and satisfied in a divine manner. And since my humanity possessed not only the fullness of my will as its own virtue, but the Word Himself, as well as the Father and the Holy Spirit, as a consequence of our inseparability, it surpassed in a more perfect way both innocent Adam and my very mamma. In fact, in them it was grace. In me it was nature. They had to draw light, grace, power, beauty from God. In me there was the springing fount of light, beauty, grace. So the difference between me as nature and my very mamma as grace was so great that she remained eclipsed before my humanity. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive. Your Jesus possesses the springing fount and has always something to give you, and you have always something to take. As much as I may tell you about my will, I have always something to tell you, and neither the short life of the exile nor the whole eternity will be enough to make known to you the long story of my supreme will, and to enumerate you for the great prodigies contained in it. End of the reading. 31st of May 1929, volume 26. How true love needs an outpouring. Creation was an outpouring of love, as well as redemption and the divine fiat. What a divine outpouring means. While writing, I was thinking to myself, how many sacrifices in order to write, how many nights of vigil, how much time employed. Only Jesus has been the witness who, having compassion for me, would sustain me, help me, feed me the words. And many times he has worked as dictator. But what will be the unity of so many cares of Jesus for making me write, and of so many interior struggles of mine in order to impress on the paper what Jesus would make me feel inside of me? What the utility of so many sacrifices borne? Who will take the trouble to read them, to make them known, so that they may bring the good of so many truths about the divine will into the midst of creatures? I believe no one, and all the sacrifices will remain in the papers. After all, if I wrote, I have done it only for fear of displeasing Jesus, so as not to displease him, and only and always to obey. So with these thoughts I continued to write. Then after I finished, I began to pray. And my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, clasping me in his arms, told me, my daughter, true love needs an outpouring. I could no longer contain within myself this intense outpouring of making known my will, its knowledges, its immense value, and how it wants to form its kingdom upon earth. My heart finds itself amid the ardours of flames, for I want to give this surprise to the human generations, the kingdom of my divine will on earth, a surprise not expected by them. And my contained love was moaning, raving, and was devoured by inextinguishable flames, for it wanted to make known that it wanted to give them this great good, a good that surpasses all other goods. That is the kingdom of my divine fiat. This great good I gave at the beginning of creation, because never do incomplete goods and works come out from our divinity. But it was rejected by man, and we had the sorrow of feeling the life, the substance, the goods, and the most essential part of creation being rejected back. And man rendered all our works incomplete for himself and has never given a thought to reacquiring what he rejected from us. But while he would not think about it, we did think about it. And this formed our martyrdom of love, a martyrdom that has lasted about 6,000 years, a secret martyrdom that increased our flames, and they devoured us so much that unable to contain them any longer, I wanted to come to you in order to break the secret, as I felt the need to make for you an outpouring of love and say to you, I want to give what man rejected. I want my will to reign upon earth. And in order to make it come to reign, I had to make it known to you. Therefore, the necessity to manifest to you so many knowledges about it. So if your sacrifices of writing will bring no good and utility, that will not be. They were necessary to my love, and have served to form my outpouring, and to relieve me of the flames that devoured me. So each knowledge about my divine fiat was an outpouring of contained love that I made for you. It was a new creation that I put out. It was like binding the divine will to the human in order to reorder it again according to the order created by us. It was life that came out of me, substance, an essential part to be able to form the kingdom of my divine will upon earth. If you knew what a divine outpouring means, outpouring of love was the creation. And oh, how many goods came out of this outpouring. Heavens, stars, seas, flowery earth, and then man, formed with such art that heaven and earth are astounded at the way man is formed. This outpouring would have continued, and yet more beautiful things were to come out of us, but man, by rejecting our divine will from us, closed this outlet of ours, and he blocked our works. And for as many as 4,000 years, our outpouring had no more way out. But our love felt the need to pour out. It wanted its rights. It wanted to release its vital flames. And bursting out its long outpouring, it created the most holy Virgin, from whom proceeded the incarnation of the Word. How many wonders in this second outpouring! What utility! How many goods have creatures not received! But this second outpouring of ours remained halved, and our love had to content itself and wait 2,000 more years to be able to burst its outpouring again and put out all its secrets, the inmost wonders of our divinity, the greatest goods that are needed in order to make our divine will reign in the midst of creatures. If you knew what a divine outpouring means, and just as in creation our outpouring made great and magnanimous works, and it is useful and it continues its life, just as the outpouring of redemption will bring its admirable effects and the redeeming life to the human generations, in the same way, this outpouring of making known what my divine fiat wants to form its kingdom, and everything you have written about its knowledges, will have life in the midst of creatures. Therefore let me pour out for now, and I will take care of rendering what I have manifested to you useful. End of the reading. The 31st of May, 1931, volume 29. The happiness of Jesus is to find his creature in the divine will. God plunges himself into the creature and the creature into God. The tiny little house of Nazareth. My abandonment in the divine volition continues, and my poor mind pauses now at one point and now at another, as though wanting to take rest in each effect of the divine will. In fact, though its act is one, its effects are innumerable, so much so that I never arrive at finding them all, much less at comprehending them. And therefore, seeing that it is not given to me to embrace them all, being too little, I pause in one of its effects to enjoy it and rest. And my sweet Jesus, who takes so much pleasure in finding me in his adorable will, pausing in order to breathe it as life, told me, my daughter, how sweet it is for me to find you in my divine will, and not like those creatures who are in it by force, by necessity, and because they cannot do without it. And while they are in it, they do not know it, nor do they love it or appreciate it. But in finding you, I find you voluntarily. You know it and love it, and you reach the point of finding your sweet rest. I feel so drawn toward you, more so since the very power of my will imposes itself on your Jesus to reveal myself, and I'm unable to deny anything to her, because I could say that the only happiness that comes to me from the earth is to find the creature in my divine will. And when I find her, I want to repay her for the happiness that she gives me, first by rendering her happy, and then by preparing her and disposing her to do and act in my will. I prepare the space for it, because the greatness, the sanctity, the power that an act done in it contains is so great that the creature could not contain it if I did not give her the capacity. Therefore, one who lives in my will is inseparable from me, because, while she has done one act, I must prepare her for the next act. More so, since I never leave the creature at one point, but I make her always grow, until I am able to say, I have no more to give her. I am content, for I have given her everything. In fact, you must know that every time the creature doesn't act in my divine will, she plunges herself into it, and God plunges himself into the creature. So, in plunging into each other, God communicates his new act, never interrupted, and the human will remains at the mercy of the divine will and feels new love, new power, new freshness, with all the divine refreshments, in such a way that in each act she feels herself being reborn again in the divine life. Without losing what she has received in the other acts, she acquires and incorporates into herself the new life that has been communicated to her, so much so that she feels herself growing, being nourished with a new growth and with new foods. So one who lives in our will acquires ever new knowledges of her Creator, and the new knowledge brings her the current of the continuous new act that God possesses. Don't you see the stars, the sun? Do you perhaps see any change in them? Or after so many centuries, are they not always fresh, beautiful, new as they were created? And why? Because they are under the empire of the creative strength of our fiat that created them and remained in them as perennial life. Therefore, the permanence of my will in the creature produces, with its dominating empire, new life of patience, of prayer, of peace, of sacrifice, and of infinite joys. What my will is, so it wants to render one who lives in it. Then I continued to think about the divine volition, and my sweet Jesus added, My daughter, when my divine will emits an act, it never draws back. On the contrary, it makes itself perennial life of its act. The very creation says this by doing continuously those acts that my will placed in it, creating it. Created things can be called the repeaters of the acts of my divine will. The heavens are always stretched out. They never withdraw from any point, and by remaining always stretched out, they always do repeated acts of divine will. The sun always gives light and is all busy performing the innumerable acts of divine will that were entrusted to it in its light. And as it gives colour and fragrance to each flower, multiple sweetness and taste to the fruits, development to the plants, light and heat to each creature, and many other acts that it does, so many acts of divine will does it keep performing. It seems to do its course with all ruling majesty in performing so many acts entrusted to it, true symbol of the majestic and ruling way of my will. The sun the sea as it murmurs, the water as it gives itself to creatures, the earth as it becomes green and produces plants and flowers. So many multiple acts of my will do they perform. My will is the motor of everything and keeps all creation in act of doing its will. And this is why they are all happy. They never lose their place of honour, nor are they subject to dying, because my will operating in created things gives them perennial life. Only the creature, The one who is to make the greatest display in doing a continuous act of my will is the only one that goes out of the motor of it and reaches the point of placing herself against the will so holy. What sorrow, and what an account will she not give to me? The sweet Jesus remained silent, and withdrawing he left me in the light of his will. And oh, how many things I comprehended, but who can say them all? More so, since in it one speaks with celestial terms. And in finding myself inside myself, I must adapt the celestial terms to the human. And fearing I might make a mess, I content myself with moving forward, hoping that if Jesus wants it, he will adapt himself to speaking with the terms of the low world. After this, I continued my acts in the divine fear, and my poor mind paused in a little house of Nazareth, where the Queen of Heaven, the celestial King Jesus, and Saint Joseph were in possession of and lived in the kingdom of the divine will. So this kingdom is not foreign to the earth. The house of Nazareth, the little family that lived in it, belonged to this kingdom and kept it in full force. But while I was thinking about this, my great King Jesus told me, my daughter, indeed, the kingdom of my will has existed upon earth, and therefore there is the sure hope that it will return again to its full force. A house of Nazareth was its true kingdom. However, we were without peoples. Now you must know that each creature is a kingdom. Therefore, one who lets the divine will reign within herself can be called a little kingdom of the supreme fiat. So she is a tiny little house of Nazareth that we have upon earth. And though little, since our will is in her reigning, heaven is not closed for her. She observes the same laws of the celestial fatherland. She lives with the same love, feeds herself with the foods from up there, and is incorporated into the kingdom of our interminable regions. Now, in order to form the great kingdom of our will upon earth, first, we will make them many tiny little houses of Nazareth, that is, the souls who will want to know it in order to let it reign within themselves. I myself and the Sovereign Queen will be at the head of these tiny little houses because we have been the first to possess this kingdom on earth. It is our right that we will not surrender to anyone to be the directors of them. Then with these tiny little houses, repeaters of our house of Nazareth, will form many little states of ours, like provinces, that after they have been formed well and ordered like many little kingdoms of our will fuse together and will form one single kingdom and one great people. Therefore, in order to have our greatest works, our way of acting is to begin first alone, one-on-one with one single creature. When we have formed this one, we will make her a channel in order to enclose in our work 2 or 3 more creatures. Then we expand, forming a little group, and then we expand it so much as to take the whole entire world. Our works begin in the isolation of God and the soul and end by continuing their life in the midst of entire peoples. And when there is the beginning of a work of ours, it is the sure sign that it will not die at birth. At the most, it may live hidden for some time, but then it will go out and will have its perennial life. Therefore, always forward do I want you in my divine will. End of the reading. The 31st of May, 1935, Volume 33. How the divine power has no limits. Certainty that the kingdom of the divine will must come. How the redemption and the kingdom of the divine will are inseparable. I'm in the arms of my lovable Jesus, who surrounds me so much with his holy volition that I do not know how to live without it. I feel it within me, that with its sweet empire it dominates over all my interior, and with an indescribable love it makes itself life of my thought, of my heartbeat and breath, and it thinks, palpitates, breathes together with me. And it seems that it tells me how happy I am that you feel, you know, that the life of your thought, of your heartbeat, of all of you is I. You feel me in you, and I feel you in me. We both, each of us, are happy to do one single thing. This is my will, that the creature feels, she knows that I am together with her. I lower myself to all her acts, and I do them together with her, in order to give her the likeness of my life and my divine acts. How much it grieves me when they set me aside, and do not recognize my dominion, and that I am truly he who forms their life. Meanwhile, I thought to myself, it seems impossible to me that the kingdom of the divine will can come. How can it come if evils abound in a terrifying way? And my sweet Jesus, displeased, told me, my blessed daughter, if you doubt this, you neither believe nor recognize my power that has no limits, and when I want, I can do everything. You must know that in creating man, our life was placed within him, and he was our dwelling. Now, if we do not place in safety this life of ours, with its decorum, with its dominion, with our full triumph, making ourselves known that we are in this dwelling, and that he feels honoured to be dominated and dwelled in by a God, if we do not do this, it means that our power is limited. It is not infinite power. It means that it does not have the power of saving itself, even less can it save others. Rather, the true good, the power that has no limits, first serves and places in safety itself, and then it overflows into others. Now, by coming upon earth to suffer and to die, I came to place man, that is to say, my dwelling, in safety. Would it not seem strange even to you if, while I placed my dwelling in safety, the owner, the dweller of it, be without his rights, without dominion, and without power to place himself in safety? Ah, no, no. My daughter, it would have been absurd, and without the order of our infinite wisdom. Redemption and the kingdom of my will are completely one, inseparable among themselves. My coming on earth came to form the redemption of man, and at the same time came to form the kingdom of my will, in order to save myself so as to take again my rights that by justice are due to me as creator. And as in the redemption I exposed myself to so many humiliations, to unheard of sufferings, even to dying crucified, I endured everything in order to place my dwelling in safety and to restore to him all the sumptuousness, the beauty, the magnificence with which I had formed him, such that he would again be worthy of me. Now, when it seemed that everything was finished and my enemies were satisfied that they had taken away my life, my power that has no limits recalled my humanity to life, and by rising again, everything rose again with me. Creatures, my sufferings, the goods I acquired for them. And as my humanity triumphed over death, so my will rose again and triumphed in creatures, awaiting its kingdom. If my humanity had not risen again, if it did not have this power, redemption would have failed, and it could be doubted that it might not be a work of God. It was my resurrection that made me known for who I was, and it placed the seal on all the goods that I came to bring upon the earth. So my divine will be the double seal, the transmission to creatures of its kingdom that my humanity possessed. Even more, because for the creatures I formed this kingdom of my divine will in my humanity. Why, therefore, would I not give it? At the most, it will be a question of time, and for us the times are one single point. Our power will make such prodigies. Man will abound with new graces, new love, new light, so that our dwellings will recognize us, and they themselves, with spontaneous will give us the dominion, and our life will be safe, with its full rights in the creature. In time, you will see what my power knows how to do and can do, how it knows how to conquer everything and knock down the most obstinate, rebellious ones. Who can ever resist my power? that with one single breath I knock down, I destroy, and I remake everything as pleases me more. Therefore you pray, and may your cry be continuous. May the kingdom of your fiat come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. End of the reading. The 31st of May 1936, volume 34, how the divine will encloses all the acts of the life of Jesus as in act to always repeat them for love of creatures. The life of Jesus symbolizes the recall of the kingdom of the divine will on earth. My poor intelligence followed the life of my sweet Jesus in the divine will, in which I found him in the act of continuing his life when he was on earth. And oh, how many marvels, how many surprises of love never thought of. In fact, the divine fiat encloses all the acts of the life of Jesus, as in the act of always repeating them for love of creatures, in order to give to each one his entire life, his sufferings, his ardent love. So my sweet Jesus, all goodness told me, my little daughter of my volition, my love wants to pour itself out. It feels the need of making known to one who wants to live of my will what I did and do, so that it could return to reign and dominate in the midst of creatures. You must know that my whole life was nothing other than the continuous recall of my will into their midst, and the recall of creatures into my supreme fiat. So much so that as I was conceived, so it symbolized the recall, the return of making it conceived in the creatures who with so much wickedness had placed it outside of their souls, and it recalled them to be conceived in it. As I was born, so I recalled my volition to be born again in all human works. In all my infantile tears, crying, prayers, and sighs, I recalled with my tears and sighs my will in the tears, sufferings, and sighs of creatures, such that I did nothing in which they would not feel the strength, the empire of my will, so that it would reign in them, that moved to pity by my and their tears, would give them the grace of the return of its kingdom. Even my exile symbolized how creatures were exiled from my volition, and I wanted to be exiled in order to recall my will into the midst of the poor exiled ones, so that it would recall them. I would convert the exile into fatherland, where they would no longer be tyrannized by enemies, by foreign people, by vile passions, but have the fullness of the goods of my will. And my return to Nazareth? How well it symbolized my divine will. I lived in it hidden. Its reigning was in full vigor in the Holy Family. I was the Word, the divine will in person, veiled by my humanity. That same will that reigned in me diffused itself to everyone. It embraced them. It was the motion and life of each one. I felt in me the motion and the life of each one, of which my fiat was the actor. What suffering, what sorrow in not being recognized, not receiving one thank you, one I love you, one act of gratitude, neither from the entire world nor from Nazareth itself, because not only my will, but also my holy humanity lived in their midst. They did not cease to give life to the light to the one who could see me and come near me in order to make myself known, but yet, in my sorrow, I always remained the hidden God. Such is the lot of my divine volition. Man was created with the creative strength of the fiat. He was born, was kneaded, soaked in it. It administers to him the continuous motion, the heat, the life. He will end his life in the fiat, and yet who knows it? Who has recognized this divine act so continuous without ever tiring, that with so much love envelops the life of the creature in order to give her life? Almost no one, my daughter. To do good, to be the primary cause of conservation, and to give perennial life to the creature, to maintain the order of all created things around her and only for her, and not to be recognized, is the sorrow of sorrows, and the patience of my will gives of the incredible. But do you know why this patience is so invincible and constant? Because it knows that its kingdom will come. Its palpitating life will be recognized in the midst of creatures, and in view of the great glory that it will receive in being known that it is the life of every life, and while it is life, it will receive every life in order to reign in them, it will no longer be hidden, but unveiled and recognized. In view of this, it supports so much ingratitude, and that only divine patience could support the prolixity of so many centuries of so much human ingratitude. From Nazareth, I passed on to the desert, where there was maximum solitude, and the greater part ferocious animals that deafened the desert with their roars that surrounded me, symbol of my divine will that, since it is not known, forms the desert around the creature, and a solitude that is horrifying and frightful. The good is laid waste, and the soul feels herself surrounded by more than fierce animals, that is, her brutal passions that send roars of rage, of bestial furies, of cruelty, of every sort of evil. My holy humanity went step by step, retracing all the sorrows that my divine will had suffered, in order to repair it and recall it to reign again in the midst of creatures. I can say that my every heartbeat, breath, word, step, and suffering was the continuous recall of my will to make itself known to the creatures in order to let it reign, and it called them into it in order to let them know the great good, the sanctity, the happiness of living in the fiat. From the desert I passed to the public life, in which few were those who believed that I was the Messiah. Of the scholarly types, almost no one. And I wanted to use my power to sow miracles in order to form for myself the people, so that if they would not believe my words, they would believe the power of my miracles. They were my divine and loving industries, that at whatever cost I wanted to make myself known, that I was their Saviour, because if they did not know me, they would not be able to receive the good of the redemption. Therefore it was necessary to make myself known, in order that my coming on earth would not be useless for them. Oh, how my public life symbolises the triumph of the kingdom of my fiat in the midst of creatures that with surprising truths I will make known. And in order to have the intent, I will make miracles and prodigies. With the power of my volition, I will recall to life those dead to grace. I will repeat the miracle of the resurrection of Lazarus, that even though they have putrefied in evil, rendering stinking cadavers like Lazarus, my fiat will recall them to life. It will stop the stench of sin. It will make them rise again in good. In sum, I will use all my divine industries in order to let my divine volition dominate in the midst of the people. See, therefore, in my every word that I said and every miracle that I did, I called my will to reign in their midst, and I called the people to live in it. From the public life I passed to the passion, symbol of the passion of my will that for so many centuries had suffered so many rebellious wills of the creatures, that by not wanting to submit themselves to it, they had closed heaven, broken the communications with their Creator, and they were rendered unhappy slaves of the infernal enemy. My lacerated humanity sought death. Crucified, it represented before the divine justice the unhappy humanity without my volition. And in every suffering, I called my fiat to give the kiss of peace with creatures in order to render them happy. And I called them into it in order to make the sorrowful passion of my will cease. Finally, death, that matured my resurrection, that called everyone to rise again in my divine fiat. And oh, how my resurrection vividly symbolized the kingdom of my will, My humanity, wounded, deformed, unrecognizable, rose again, healthy, with an enchanting beauty, glorious and triumphant. It prepared the triumph, the glory to my will, calling everyone into it and impetrating that everyone would rise again in my volition, from the dead to the living, from ugly to beautiful, from unhappy to happy. My arisen humanity assures the kingdom of my will on earth. It was my unique act, full of triumph and victory, and this was befitting to me, because I did not want to depart for heaven if first I had not given all the helps to the creatures in order to let them re-enter into the kingdom of my volition, and all the glory, the honour, the triumph to my supreme fiat in order to let it dominate and reign. Therefore, unite yourself with me, and let it be that there is no act that you do, and suffering that you suffer, that you do not call my will to take its royal and dominating place, and as victor, conquer everything in order to make it known, loved, and wanted by everyone. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. There are no more readings this month.